Note the disclaimer. Massive thanks to DreamWorks Animation Fan 1995 for suggesting this video and the sequels.
Nice try, DreamWorks, but you're not going to distract me from noting this 47 seconds of two logos.
I'll give it a rest.
Once upon a time...
Yet another DreamWorks movie opens with a shot of a storybook on Once Upon a Time riff. The only thing left to do to ensure brand loyalty is to now show a montage of a character doing...
I hate to cut you off there, Jeremy. Okay, that's a lie. But Poppy is telling the story of Trollstis to lead to the safer life they live now, and no one who bought a ticket to this movie was doing it out of brand loyalty or because they expected it to be like Shrek. Just because that film became known for gross-out humour doesn't mean every DreamWorks movie is going to be like that.
Wow, these trolls sure do look a lot like Stitch from Disney's Lilo and Stitch. Hey, where'd all these lawyers come from?
Oh, I sent a summons out a long time ago. Anyway, you must have been skipping your optometrist appointment again. These guys are based on Thomas Dam's troll dolls. Nowhere near Stitch.
Eating a troll made them feel so happy. They started a tradition.
I'm not surprised. Trolls are apparently 40% hair and 60% pure MDMA.
Jeremy invents a problem out of thin air cliché.
Once a year, every year, the Bergens would gather around the troll tree to taste happiness.
But why once a year? If eating a troll makes the Bergens feel so good, wouldn't they be gobbling them up by the bushel?
Because there's a limited supply and the trolls have to reproduce. If the Bergens just continued to eat them all in one fell swoop, the supply would run out way too fast. And while there are other troll societies like we see in World Tour, the Bergens wouldn't be able to reach them because they'd be too far away, and given their depressive nature, wouldn't have the motivation to go out anyway.
Seriously, the Bergens eat trolls and shit, but they also have a donut shop? Doesn't that shit make them happy too? How can you sadly eat a fucking donut?
Well, it's like Luke and Grandy Tamias alluded to in their videos. Donuts might just suppress their sadness instead of make it go away. Remember, at this point in the movie, the Bergens can't feel happiness of their own accord.
Their lighter fluid looks more like Nickelodeon slime than lighter fluid. Wait, maybe that is Nickelodeon slime and we just didn't know how flammable it was. That really changes the tone of Double Dare.
Oh hey Jeremy, Nickelodeon called. They want you to stop talking about their slime in a DreamWorks movie. Not to mention, that doesn't even look anywhere close to it. Also pointing things out on the screen.
This is a very special Trollstis.
How do they feed the whole town with two tiny grills and the tiny trolls? Doesn't the happiness dissipate when they're divided up into parts?
They can be prepared in different ways. Some Bergens like their trolls cooked, others will want to have them raw. It's like apples. We have them raw, either whole or segmented, or we can cook them into various things like apple pies, crumbles and strudels. And it's even likely they could make troll juice similarly to apple juice, and lots more besides.
As there is one amongst us who has never tasted a troll.
Oh, me! She's talking about me!
Wait, Prince Gristle is less than a year old, and he can ride trikes, walk, and talk? With that kind of growth rate, the older Bergen should be in wheelchairs by the time they're 25.
Oh god, was this scene written by Gen Alpha? Anyway, much like many organisms, real or fictional, Bergens age at different rates. Not to mention in the second movie, Tiny Diamond's a baby, but talks and acts like a grown man, unlike Baby Poppy at the start of this movie, and Baby Branch at the start of Band Together.
Please make me happy, Princess Poppy.
What the hell are the grills for, then?
Like I said 2 sins ago, some Bergens like their trolls cooked, others like them raw. In fact, Moon even mentioned to me that seafood would also be an apt comparison, since various fish types can be eaten baked, poached, fried, grilled, or raw, like in cases of sushi, sashimi, and even ceviche. This would technically be double dipping.
5 minutes in, and we already have our second underwear sight gag. DreamWorks, you do you.
Get ready for more in the future.
If it were this easy to escape the troll tree, why didn't they do it long before now?
Better to do it on a day when the Bergens would be occupied, instead of when they're roaming around all gloomy. Otherwise, there's a possibility they could get caught and eaten that way.
She is hereby banished from Bergentown forever!
I know King Gristle is looking for a scapegoat, but why is Chef the one that's banished? I mean, she just cooks the trolls, right? She can't be the only one in town checking in with them on the regular.
Well, if you watched the introduction scene in its entirety and didn't cut it to ribbons just so it would fit your narrative, then you'd know that she's not just the chef.
Please give it up for your keeper of the trolls.
So because this particular Trollstis went wrong as the supply ran off, King Gristle had no other choice but to banish her since she was responsible for them.
You will never, ever, ever, ever be happy.
Never?
Ever.
But there's a portrait right behind them of the king and prince cheesing.
So Jeremy has never heard of posing for the picture. Got it.
This is where we will rebuild our civilization.
Unless we've just had a massive time jump, they couldn't be more than a day's walk from Bergentown.
Do you really need to be shown that to be told they got far enough away? Anyway, to put your mind at ease, yes, it was a day's walk, since Poppy and Branch's trek through the jungle shows as much.
And sweet acoustics.
Huh, I half expected to hear Smash Mouth's All-Star.
Hey, idiot features, can you stop trying to create parallels to Shrek? You would have seen them for it anyway, since you did it when covering Shrek and threatened it in Chicken Little. And I know, because Luke and I covered that very film on his channel.
Also, 7 minutes and 32 seconds into the movie is when we get the title of the movie. That's like 8% of the movie already.
Slightly better maths than on the Muppet Christmas Carol, but I'm not going to let you get away with that on this sin. Primarily because not all movies have to start with the title. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Finding Nemo, and the animated Lilo and Stitch waited several minutes to show the titles. And most others like Transformers 1, Big Hero 6, and How to Train Your Dragon didn't show theirs until the end credits.
And now every troll is free to be happy and live in perfect harmony.
Why do princesses always get stuck watching the Village Kids? They didn't have anyone else who could read from the sacred book of exposition?
Okay, I should have done this sin better in my original video for trolls, but I'm gonna correct myself. If you're just talking about DreamWorks that has a character that's based on royalty, like for example, Poppy here, or even Fiona from the Shrek movies, this is the only time I can think of that a princess character in DreamWorks lore that does this to children. But if you're talking about any princess that I can think of any studio, and this does include shows like Ella from Pacateo Island for Total Drama, I don't think I can think of one princess character that does this, except the only one I can think of right now is Mulan from the Mulan 2 movie, even though that movie is kind of bad in my opinion. But that was only like teaching a lesson and not like giving exposition. So what are you talking about?
I'll add on there that because she experienced it firsthand, it would be more impactful for the kids to hear. Like when Grandy Tomias mentioned Holocaust and 9/11 survivors talking about their experience at a school.
What the hell are these little things? They're not trolls, and they weren't in the rescue party from 20 years ago. So the troll race must have enslaved, trained, and domesticated an entirely new species for transportation and acoustic drumming, which is pretty goddamn gruesome.
First off, Jeremy, these little things are called woofer bugs. Secondly, the trolls running from the troll tree were an escape party, not a rescue party. Also, domesticating animals is not in any way gruesome, like Luke, Grandy Tomias, and Moon all pointed out before.
Something's missing.
Phew, we were almost at the 10-minute mark, and I was worried we weren't going to get any scatological humor in this f***ing thing.
Still acting like every DreamWorks film has to be like Shrek, huh? Well, all I can say is get used to it. And you make way worse jokes than this, so don't go throwing stones, Mr. Glass.
I could hear you from a mile away. If I can hear you, so can the Bergens.
But they haven't. The trolls have presumably been doing routines like this for 20 fucking years with not one of those fuckers hearing them.
Because up until now, they haven't been loud enough for a Bergen to find them over the 20 years that they've been free. Which is exactly Branch's point here.
The Bergens are coming! Ah!
Hang on, I thought trolls were always happy. Shouldn't their funerals be more like New Orleans wakes?
Just because the trolls are always happy doesn't mean they can't be capable of feeling other emotions like fear, envy, or rage. And Branch here is an extreme example, as after losing his grandmother, he sunk into depression and lost all his colour. Also, we'd only see jazz wakes for the jazz trolls. If you want a slightly more peppy funeral scene, watch My Chemical Romance's video for the song Helena and come back to me.
I don't do happy.
But why not? Yes, he's had a traumatic event in his past, but he's a troll, and trolls seem to be genetically predisposed to happiness, but Branch is all rebelliously sad. That's like a cow consciously deciding not to produce milk.
Like Luke, Grandy Tomias, and Moon all said, you just answered yourself, Jeremy. His grandmother was eaten by a Bergen, and he sank into depression and lost all his colour. Which I'm now realising I just said earlier, so screw it, double dipping.
Cool trick, but these poor trolls are stuck up in the air for the entirety of the party, spinning and spinning, instead of enjoying it with their friends below.
Who says they won't be performing dances in the air during their disco ball routine?
YOLO!
Damn, it's almost like this script was written by 47-year-old dudes that were forced to come up with how they think young millennials talk. looking... Hey, it was!
This coming from the bloke who's twice my age. Glass houses, Mr. Scott. Glass houses.
This movie is basically the ant and the grasshopper fable, but with glitter feces and clown corpses.
Objection speculation. In The Ant and the Grasshopper, there's a lesson about how much more important it is to be prepared for unforeseen circumstances instead of being carefree and breezing through life. Trolls here flips that on its head, as while Branch is overly prepared for a Bergen attack, and rightly so, he ends up being ostracized from the rest of the village because he doesn't build personal relationships or find true happiness. This gets expanded on in the sequels as his brothers just up and leave him, and the only other close relationship he had was with his now-deceased grandmother.
Also, Poppy is overexcited, but she's not an idiot, right? The music and noise is one thing, but why would she authorize this obvious glitter flare within range of everyone nearby to see?
I wouldn't say she was an idiot, per se. More so oblivious. But this is a character flaw, not a movie flaw. Poppy's issue here is being arrogant and failing to realise that her actions may have consequences for herself or the people around her. A point explored here and in World Tour. And to be fair, Chef was the only Bergen specifically searching for the trolls, and this was the only way she managed to catch wind of them.
It's pretty, but I think this troll village is a little more Pandora than the filmmakers intended.
Sending something you like, and making another unwarranted reference to Avatar. Another bloody phone call and still no freaking secretary.
Gotcha.
Really, movie? Can there not be one animated non-Pixar movie that doesn't have the character poops when scared cliché?
According to this TV Tropes article I took screenshots of, there's only 13 films where toilet humour appears in. Meanwhile, there's more in Pixar's lineup. Oh, how the turntables.
Chef has access to many other trolls if she'd just spend a little more time looking for them, like, she's been doing for the past 20 years.
If she had something bigger, like a duffel bag or even a namesake Bergen pack, I would agree. But she just has a bum bag here, meaning she wouldn't be able to fit every single troll in there anyway. And aside from Creek, Biggie, Guy Diamond, Satin, Chenille, Smidge, Fuzzbert, DJ Suki and Cooper, all the rest of the trolls scattered like cockroaches.
Celebrate freedom from the Bergens!
Branch decimated this invitation when Poppy gave it to him, but it's magically without a scratch here because we need a reason to like this character.
Even though Poppy's the only one we see with the scrapbooking prowess, trolls in general have that creative gene inside of them. So even moody Branch here would be able to put it back together without issue.
Also, Grump secretly wants to join the fun cliché.
To quote Grandy Tomias once again, Jeremy invents a cliché that he'll only ever use for this one-time cliché.
Will you go to Bergentown with me and save everyone?
There are still, 30 trolls left in the village, but Poppy goes to the one dude that doesn't get along with anyone to ask for help.
I think for this one I'll let Luke take over.
Think about it though. Branch is a lot more cautious and knowledgeable about the Bergens, which was why he warned Poppy not to throw the party in the first place. And since he's the troll that's the most knowledgeable about the Bergens, why wouldn't Poppy go to him for help?
And it's my fault they were taken, and now I don't know what to do.
Why don't you try scrapbooking them to freedom?
Jesus, this movie cast maybe the two most likable leads in the world, but gave them such huge character flaws that it's impossible to root for either of them.
Your troll script is looking worse and worse the more I go through it, Jeremy. If a character didn't have flaws, they won't learn or change by the end of the movie. If Woody never got stuck at Sid's place and had the heart-to-heart with Buzz when he realised he was only a toy, Woody would end up distancing himself from the rest of the toys because they're giving more attention to Buzz. If Oscar never learned to reveal his true feelings for Angie or admit to the real cause of Frankie's death, then he'd be stuck with a whole bunch of falsified friends who only like him for his newfound wealth and power, and once they find out about the lie, they'll dump him in the bottom of the Mariana Trench faster than you can say humpback whale. In this case, Branch needs to learn to accept others into his life and open his emotions back up, and Poppy needs to realise that she needs to dial back on some things so that her actions don't get her or her loved ones in trouble, and if neither of them did that, then Branch would still be a sour little recluse, and Poppy would end up becoming a Happy Meal at McBurgan's.
Hey, anytime, Poppy. See you in 10 years.
Branch clearly doesn't expect Poppy or any of the trolls to live that long.
Jeremy? Are you narrating again?
This journey to Bergentown is suddenly fraught with peril, but just 20 years ago, the king lit a bunch of slow-ass trolls out here in less than a day. Were there many more trolls that didn't make it during the trip that we don't know about?
If it was actually important to the movie, it would explain it to you, but then you'd send them for exposition, so no way to win there. However, we do hear later in Band Together that some trolls had fallen behind the rest of the escape party, and under Viva's leadership, took refuge on the remains of an abandoned Bergen mini-golf course.
Poppy's walk to Bergentown takes her through an acid rainstorm, a desert, and a f***ing blizzard within the span of one day.
Jeremy has never experienced Texas weather. How did I forget to say that back when I sent into this video?
No clue, but glad you were able to rectify that.
Branch Ex Machina.
Something something Ex Machina, something something idiot features.
Poppy, hang on!
Branch must have been following Poppy throughout this journey, right? And if so, he's casually watched her get threatened with fire, eaten, pooped into an egg, and poisoned, but chooses now to get concerned about her well-being.
It's more a case of what Poppy went through, she survived easily, but this was trickier for her to escape because of that berry she ate, and Branch was hesitant to even go on this journey because of what he experienced. So this in turn gave Poppy a head start, and Branch has only just caught up.
They're alive, Branch. I know it.
You don't know anything, Poppy. And I can't wait to see the look on your face when you realize the world isn't all cupcakes and rainbows.
Why did Branch come on this excursion then? I know he wanted to get away from the hugging and singing at Trolltown, but he could have gone anywhere else.
Jeremy answers himself cliché, but he also joined her here because despite being Gus the Grump, he does care about Poppy's well-being and wants to ensure safe passage to Bergentown for her.
I also like a little silence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Poppy decides to behave like a literal troll to poor Branch.
Oh look! A callback to my Final Destination 5 video. Thank you! Anyway, his next sin involves Poppy knowing the sounds of silence despite being part of the most joyous race in the world, and where she kept her ukulele. For the first one, it's a well-known song even for pop trolls, and secondly, a little something called Hammerspace.
Wait, that's a boot and fast food litter and a car tire. There are humans here? Or there were humans, which is the more disturbing option?
No, you dolt. It was all coming from Bergentown, which we see in these bits of evidence here. The existence of skates during the roller rink date shows that shoes aren't a foreign concept to them, even though they walk around barefoot or with some sort of wrapping. In that same rink, we see Gristle and Bridget, under the guise of Lady Glittersparkles, sharing a pizza, which alongside the donut shop explains the takeaway rubbish, and in Band Together we see Bridget and Gristle riding a motorcycle, which would explain the car tire.
Now I'm thinking we hug.
Movie continues to derive humor out of various characters soiling themselves in terror.
That sounds like a you problem, mate.
Wait, you're telling me there's only one Flurg restaurant in town, but there are 3 Narnars?
Sounds like you're sinning reality, since it's like other fast food places.
They're as miserable as you. Which means they haven't eaten a troll yet!
So what you're saying is, if a few of them eat trolls, then they will all be happy.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you there and say take the semantics out of your head for a minute. Poppy is simply saying that none of the trolls were eaten yet, because none of the Bergens are happy.
I am their king.
What happened to the John Cleese version of the king? It's been 20 years, sure, but young Gristle is under 21 at this point.
Okay, before you go any further, context clues tell us that Gristle Sr. likely passed away, maybe from natural causes or illness, hence why Gristle Jr. is now the king. Secondly, if the movie took time to answer those questions, it would take too long and you'd sin it for padding the runtime.
We must all remain calm.
Especially since at least 3/4 of you could simply fit between the bars of the cage and just walk the hell out of here. Sorry, Biggie.
I think he meant to say 8/9 if we discount Mr. Dinkles and consider Saturn and Chenille separate despite the joined hair. Also, they could free Biggie somehow once they're out, but they have nowhere to go. The castle is crawling with Bergens, and Chef is right there watching them.
He who controls the trolls controls the kingdom, and I am that he!
You're a dude? Unusually transphobic humor for a modern children's movie in 2016.
No phobia here. As Grandy Tamaya said in his video, Cooper misunderstood Chef's attempt at being dramatic because he couldn't grasp the use of her wordplay there.
Oh, my dad said the first time should be special.
This second fake out is long enough to remind me that even though it's only 81 minutes long, this movie had to pad its runtime.
That's rich coming from the same dude who provides non-sins, pop culture references, and unwarranted boner and college girlfriend jokes just to pad the sin count.
There's a Bergen Beat magazine. Who publishes it? Who writes the articles? There's a cover story titled End Misery, but how the hell do they know how to do that? And why does Bridget have to hide it anyway?
A massive amount of unimportant questions does not a sin make, Mr. Scott.
I'm not! Why won't you sing?
Because singing killed my grandma, okay?
Schadenfreude again? Wow. Just wow.
And I need you now tonight, and I need you more than ever.
Why do these erstwhile euphoric trolls continue to sing depressing-ass songs?
Maybe because not all music is happy-sounding. Pop tunes can have dark lyrics, man.
Nothing he can say. A total eclipse of the heart.
apparently all the fantasy characters in this fantasy movie grew up listening to the same 1980s human power ballads.
Good point, but can you please explain to us why that is wrong?
At this point, you could tell me I'm watching the movie Sing, and I would totally believe you.
Yeah, but you already compared Sing to Zootopia with the animal characters, as Luke covered in his video about the movie. But aside from the two movies coming out in 2016, and both of them being jukebox musicals, there's no correlation between the two.
Is this the third or fourth time-killing song montage this movie has made me suffer through? I lost count.
If we're talking song montages in general, then according to Luke, it's 7. But if it's specifically time-killing, then Grandy Tobias tells us it's the 0th, since this is a characterization building montage like the 6 others before.
I'll just get my worthless scullery maid to get another place setting ready for the lovely lady Glittersparkles.
Gristle only introduced Bridget as his +1, so the only way Chef could know her name is if the screenwriters were committed to seeing Christine Baranski chew the hell out of this line.
Well, if you didn't cut the scene to all hell so you could lie your way through the video, you'd see Gristle referring to Bridget as Lady Glittersparkles to Chef.
You seem to be having fun.
Oh, I am. Meet the lovely Lady Glittersparkles.
Also singing something you like. Beverly Hofstadter owns every scene she's in.
And the filmmakers really used the finest vintage technology and music for this workout montage. Between Gristle working out to Donna Summer's I Feel Love, Bridget singing Lionel Richie's Hello, Branch singing Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart, Troll Village singing Earth, Wind & Fire's September, and Kool and the Gang Celebration, and Branch and Poppy's Cyndi Lauper True Colors duet, was anyone even thinking about the present day?
I would argue that going classical retro would be the wisest choice, since when I did a placement at a supplement company, the only things I heard on the radio were Heat Waves by Glass Animals, Cold Heart by Elton John and Dua Lipa, and Ghost by Justin Bieber. Every single time I heard those songs, I would involuntarily twitch. So something like Cyndi Lauper, Bruce Springsteen or Bryan Adams would be far better welcomed. Also, have you ever heard of jukebox musicals? I have. I even had an ensemble role in one called All Shook Up, and the Trolls films are much like that.
How is this skate being propelled exactly? Or steered?
If you actually used your eyes, or got that optometrist appointment I keep reminding you of, you'd see Fuzzbert running on one of the wheels.
I'm sick of writing them, you're sick of hearing them.
Okay, then I'll spare my audience any further whining and say that Jeremy is once again complaining about a glittery troll's gimmick.
It looks like Trollstice was traditionally held out by the Troll Tree, as kind of a summer barbecue, but now they're all headed to the castle, which definitely doesn't look big enough to host the entire town, let alone for a formal banquet.
To put your mind at ease, again, the Troll Tree has been extinct for 20 years after the trolls escaped, meaning the Bergens have never had a Trollstice day since, and now that Chef's back in town and the trolls have been found again, this could be seen as a momentous occasion.
Now let's prepare the main course.
Movie needs to pick a side, be a bonkers fairy tale about a grim death for the protagonist, or a lighthearted adventure for a f***ing toy line.
Why can't it be both? The most lighthearted movies can have dark moments, and vice versa.
Are you being sarcastic?
Yes!
Oh my god.
Admit it, you half expected this character to poop himself out of shock, didn't you?
First off, I'd just like to remind you that Jeremy tried to call out transphobia in an earlier sin, yet misgenders Smidge here, because despite her masculine voice, she is female. And no, we weren't expecting her to do anything but exclaim, "Oh my god," like that, since we've heard it before.
You have to wonder, if a troll loses its color, does it still bring happiness to a Bergen that eats it? Probably not, right? So why didn't they just lose hope a long time ago and make it useless for them to eat them?
And you don't see why that might be a bad idea? I mean, think about it. These guys are gonna eat us, so let's just sink into depression and lose our taste. Not a good moral lesson for the kids watching this movie, now is it?
Bergen Ex Machina!
No, you dolt. We've seen Bridget for a large portion of this movie. She formed a friendship with the trolls, and they helped her get a date. Meanwhile, on the outside of that pot, after Chef sent her to the kitchen, Bridget actually took them outside of the castle so that they could escape. So therefore the answer is right in front of your face, and yet you ignore it and choose to say this resolution came out of nowhere. And frankly, everyone is tired of it.
Do you really think I can be happy?
Of course! It's inside you! It's inside of all of us!
I got this feeling inside my bones.
And by inside you, I mean this song will be stuck inside your head for the next 3 days.
Eesh! Okay, 25 sins for sinning can't stop the feeling.
Aw, those cute, happy little trolls just murdered someone. That's totes adorbs.
I can smell the sarcasm from over here, and it's repulsive. And the trolls didn't murder Chef, she and Creek were eaten by a monster in a post-credits scene. And with that, court is adjourned. Be sure to leave any more suggestions for CinemaSins sins down below, and I will see you all in the next video.